Summoners and distinguished guests, welcome again to the next episode of tRx. Today we're talking about one of the best fighters in Marvel Contest of Champions. That's right, we're talking about Nick Fury. He not only has some of the best damage in the game, but his utility is off the charts in very unique fights. So let's not waste any time and get right into it, shall we? To start off, Fury's utility relies heavily on how many tactical charges he currently has. These can be applied in a few ways. The first being his special one. When launched, this will apply 4 charges. Second, his abilities will allow him to start the fight with 6 charges when fighting against Avengers. This does not include champs tagged as new Avengers. And finally, Fury will gain a charge each time he is struck. This is reduced to only 25% chance when fighting against immune opponents. Once Fury has 5 or more charges, his special abilities will begin. When over 5 charges, Fury's attacks cannot miss or be evaded. At 10 or more charges, when knocking down opponents, Fury will purify all debuffs on him. Without these charges, he will only purify non-damaging debuffs. Above 15 charges, all of Fury's attacks will become unblockable. And finally, upon reaching 20 tactical charges, all charges are removed and replaced with a Fury's Fury buff, which provides a significant damage increase for 10 seconds. All tactical charges gained are doubled while this buff is active. When awakened, if Fury would be knocked out, his life model decoy is destroyed and the real Fury joins the fight in its place. All buffs, debuffs, and current tactical charges will be removed, and he'll gain a permanent Fury's Fury buff. The major drawback is Fury's health will begin to degenerate until he's down to 30% health. While this creates a major disadvantage and risk in regards to health, the benefit of significantly increased damage is usually worth the risk. While I prefer to use his SIG ability as a backup and progress in quests as far as I can before losing the LMD, many players will purposely allow it to be destroyed early on to allow for maximum damage for the remainder of the quest. That's a quick overview of how Fury's utility works within the battle room. Take down several pesky opponents, whether they're in quest or arena. But now I want to go over his key source of damage. Fury has multiple bleed effects, all of which serve a different purpose. Fury has 4 different active bleed effects he can apply. The first is on his medium hits. This applies a low damage bleed for 6 seconds. His next bleed effect is placed when landing a heavy attack. This will inflict up to 3 stacks of bleed, again each dealing low damage over 12 seconds. While neither of these 2 bleeds are meant to be big damage dealers, together they serve a key purpose, which we'll get to shortly. Fury's next active bleed comes from Special 2. This attack causes 4 stacks of bleed, each dealing moderate damage over 8 seconds. This also has a 50% chance to stun for 3 seconds. This chance increases by a flat 10% for each active tactical charge on Fury. His final active bleed is the Moneymaker. Ending a combo with a light attack inflicts a high damage debuff over 1 second. Fury also has a passive internal bleed effect. If the opponent has 8 stacks of bleed, they are removed and replaced with this passive effect, dealing moderate damage over 30 seconds. While eternal bleed is active, all the opponent's active bleed debuffs have an increased duration of 0.2 seconds per tactical charge. With my mastery setup, I found the best method is back-to-back cycle of parrying medium heavy attack to activate eternal bleed. Alright, enough of beating up Winter Soldier. Let's hop into some real in-game fights where we can show off Fury's true potential. I want to start off by showing a fight against one of the most annoying invaders in the game. Yep, I'm talking about Miles Morales. But I found a fight to make him even more annoying. This is in Act 6.3.1, and he's linked with Mesmerize, which is a 7% chance to evade, and if that happens, he'll stun me and it'll be lights out. But playing it smart with Fury, Miles won't be able to evade a single time. This fight is pretty straightforward, so I've gone ahead and doubled the speed to keep things moving. I started the fight very passively until I can launch 2 Special 1 attacks to get over 5 charges. Once I'm there, Miles doesn't know it yet, but this fight is over. A key thing to pay attention to when using Fury for his utility is his tactical charges under his health bar. During this fight, I'm trying to keep Miles from evading. The repeated use of Special 1 can bring your charges dangerously close to that 20 mark. While the added Fury damage is a huge bonus, this would allow Miles to evade, and in this particular fight, he has enough charges to evade any attack I throw at him unless I'm above 5 charges. We got close during this fight, but not before knocking out Miles. Jumping into the same fight in Act 6, I want to show the difference between playing the fight normally versus using Fury's signature ability. This current fight is playing back at regular speed and is over faster than the previous fight we just watched at 200% speed. At the beginning of the fight, I let Miles lay into me and allow Fury's Fury buff to activate. When his signature ability is active, Fury is completely stun immune. but even still, I'm playing cautiously to avoid Miles evading and potentially knocking out Fury for real this time. This fight is even easier than the last. Besides the added damage boost, I only need to use a single special one to completely shut down Miles' evade mechanic. The second special one is simply to lock in the unblockable buff. This helps if Miles decides to play it passively, and I won't have to sit around baiting specials the whole fight. The rest of the fight is a walk in the park. I fight normally and can utilize my special 2 to put an end to this fight and move on. Here's another example of Fury's prowess in the contest. As you get into more difficult content, Kabam will throw unique nodes at us to keep us on our toes. One such example is Do You Bleed. If you haven't come across this node yet, Do You Bleed negates all damage except for bleed effects. It's like they made this node for Fury. Even though most of Fury's damage derives from his bleeds, in this fight I'm playing like I normally would, conserving his signature ability until I need it. For that reason, to keep the video moving, we'll watch this playback in fast motion. I'm going to utilize all my bleed mechanics that I lined out earlier in this video. I use my medium and heavy attacks to push Hawkeye into Eternal Bleed passive, and I'm using my special 1 to increase my tactical charges. With Hawkeye being tagged as an Avenger, I'm able to get to a higher charge count even faster. All of this combined, I'm then ending my combos with light attacks to max out my bleed damage. I could have paid a bit closer attention to the passive bleed effect in this fight and put an additional passive to avoid having the downtime, but it's pretty straightforward to reapply, so not that big a deal. Rinse and repeat, and Hawkeye is down before you know it. We're going to finish off the video with a few more short clips showing off Fury's utilities. He's definitely one of my favorite champs to use, and 90% of the time, he has a spot reserved to my questing team. Because whether it's a fight against a stun immune Spider-Man, having to deal with Darkhawk's auto block in shield mode, or his miss mechanic in stealth mode, or even Medusa with her Living Strands auto block, Fury is ready for it all. Alright guys, that'll do it for this episode of Doc's Tricks. Hopefully you learned a thing or two about Fury, but I want to hear back from you guys. How are you utilizing him in the contest? Is he one of your main damage dealers, or is he simply there for synergy purposes? As well, what are some other champs that you want to see in future episodes? Maybe you just pulled them as a new champion, or maybe they've been on the back burner for a long time and you're not sure how to use them. Sound off in the comment section below. I want to start a conversation. If you guys enjoyed the video or found it helpful, hit that like button. It'll help me out in the long run. As well, I've got some great videos in the works right now. Hit that subscribe button. Follow the channel. It'll definitely help out. Until then, stay tuned. Doctor's orders.